Between Endgame and Infinity War, the completed Infinity Gauntlet with the Infinity Stones are used for 4 different snaps. We won't give away who makes those 4 snaps, though, just in case. Anthony Mackie reportedly wanted to be involved in a Marvel film so he could show his son and other black children that there are superheroes who look like them. The movies may take up a lot of airspace when it comes to the MCU, but the shared universe is also all over the silver screen, with over a dozen different TV shows and even more in production. In the case of the show Runaways, it was originally intended to be a film and even had a completed script written by Drew Pearce, who co-wrote Iron Man 3, but it was shelved after the success of the first Avengers. A few years later, it found new life as a television series, and premiered on Hulu in 2017 to positive reviews. The opening scene of Avengers: Endgame, which features Clint Barton, Hawkeye, and his family, was originally meant to be part of the finale in Avengers: Infinity War. However, it was determined that since Hawkeye wasn't in the film previously, it would serve better as a prologue to Endgame and as Hawkeye's reintroduction. Not everything can be a home run, and unfortunately, the TV show Inhumans is considered a rare failure in the MCU. Hated by fans and critics alike, the show is the lowest rated property in the MCU, with an 11% rating from critics and 45% from audiences on Rotten Tomatoes. It was cancelled after just 1 season consisting of 8 episodes. It's no secret that Iron Fist is considered the weakest link out of all the Marvel Netflix shows, and it probably didn't help that the show was rushed through production. Finn Jones, who plays Danny Rand, Iron Fist, revealed that he would learn the fight choreography for a scene sometimes as soon as 15 minutes before filming. 2 of Marvel's other superheroes are vaguely hinted at during the runtime of Avengers: Endgame. In one case, a character discusses a man named Braddock. This is a reference to Brian Braddock, better known as Captain Britain. The other reference comes when someone brings up a seismic event under the Atlantic Ocean. Fittingly, the Atlantic Ocean happens to be the home of Namor, Marvel's rough equivalent to Aquaman. The Marvel films and shows all exist in the MCU, and the shows don't shy away from mentioning their film counterparts, but they tend to do it in an awkward way. You may hear the character names Captain America, Thor, the Incredible Hulk, or Iron Man mentioned in the shows, but you'll also hear them referred to as the Flag Waver, the big blonde dude with the hammer, the Iron Suit, or the Incredible Green Guy. And those are just our favorites. There are plenty more. Charlie Cox went the extra mile, and then pulled back, when it came to playing Daredevil. Rather than pretending to be blind, he had special contacts made that actually impaired his vision. However, after 2 days of shooting and needing the crew to help him get around, he threw the contacts out. While filming a fight scene for an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Chloe Bennett, who plays Daisy Johnson, Skye, broke her arm. She fought through the pain though, finished the scene, and even did one more take. Among the many people who reprised their Marvel characters for this film is Robert Redford. Fans will remember that he played one of the villains in Captain America: Winter Soldier. Since then, Redford had announced his intention to retire from acting, but he returned for Avengers: Endgame. As far as last films go, Redford chose well. Similarly, while filming a fight scene for Season 2 of Jessica Jones, Krysten Ritter took an uppercut right on the chin. She ended up unconscious on the floor, but it wasn't from the punch. She almost bit through her tongue, and when she saw the blood she passed out. If acting doesn't work out, Ritter could have a future in boxing with a chin like that. Except for, all the blood. Shields of various materials were constructed for the first Captain America film. Shields used for punching people were made from rubber. A magnetized shield was used whenever it was attached to Captain America's back, and any shield that was thrown was created digitally. Before it ultimately went to Chris Evans, Sam Worthington and Will Smith were in early talks for the role of Captain America. Also on the short list were Garrett Hedlund, Channing Tatum, Scott Porter, Mike Vogel, Sebastian Stan, Wilson Bethel, John Krasinski, Michael Cassidy, Chase Crawford, Jensen Ackles, Kellen Lutz, Ryan Phillippe, and Alexander Skarsgård, because evidently, the producers didn't know the definition of the word short. Hey, at least no one can say they didn't do their due diligence. Arguably one of the most important characters in Avengers Endgame was Nebula, Karen Gillan. However, headlining such a big film as this doesn't mean that's the limit of Gillan's ambitions. While promoting the film, she's made it clear that she would love to direct a film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Frankly, we'd love to see how that turns out. Vibranium is a rare and fictional metal that can only be found in Wakanda. It's what was used to make Captain America's shield and Black Panther's suit. After years of being a redhead, Black Widow went blonde in Infinity War. Having appeared with a different hairstyle in each of her appearances, the choice to go platinum was an homage to Yelena Belova, the second character who uses the moniker of Black Widow in Marvel Comics. In the Avengers, Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner mentions a botched suicide attempt. This is a reference to a deleted scene from 2008's The Incredible Hulk starring Edward Norton. Poor Norton, eh? He doesn't make the cut for the movie, but they don't have problems alluding to the original Hulk. He must be pretty angry. And you wouldn't like him. When he's in Avengers Endgame, Tony Stark and Pepper Potts are revealed to have had a daughter named Morgan together. This child is a reference to the son that Tony had in the comics. This makes for the fourth time that the Marvel films have changed the sex of a comics character from male to female. The previous examples were the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Mar-Vell in Captain Marvel. JARVIS, the name of Iron Man's first AI assistant, is an acronym for just a rather very intelligent system. I wonder if Paul Bettany knew he was signing up to play a superhero as important as Vision when he agreed to provide JARVIS's voice in the first Iron Man? A partially disassembled prototype of Captain America's shield can be seen in Tony Stark's workshop in Iron Man 2. In all three Iron Man films, signs, buildings, and trucks can be seen bearing the logo for Roxxon Energy, which in the Marvel Comics is the oil company responsible for the murder of Tony Stark's parents. They've got a pretty cool logo though. So they have that going for them. Anyone interested in a remarkable Easter egg should pay attention to the Endgame scene during the third act when the Wasp appears for the first time. If you look next to her, you can see Howard the Duck standing with the rest of the Avengers. While Tony Stark is rich, he's not the richest Marvel superhero. That honor goes to Black Panther, who is worth 5 times as much as Stark. This is one of those situations, oh which there are many, when it really pays to be a literal king. The owner of the pizza shop in 2008's The Incredible Hulk is played by Paul Soles, the voice of Bruce Banner from the 1960s Hulk cartoon. Crazy how far a guy can fall. One day you're a massive green behemoth, conquering the world's most dangerous supervillains. And the next you're selling cheap pizza in a dingy shop. Sorry, former Bruce. In Winter Soldier, the freighter that is taken hostage at the beginning is called the Lemurian Star, a reference to the sunken kingdom of Lemuria, home to a race called the Deviants in the Marvel Comics. Probably bad luck to name your ship after an entire city that sunk. Part of Avengers Endgame takes place in the Norwegian city of Tønsberg. This is actually the third time that Tønsberg, known as the oldest city in Norway, makes an appearance in the series. It appears in the opening of both Thor and Captain America, the first Avenger. When Red Skull finds the Tesseract in Captain America The first Avenger, he mentions that the Führer is too busy digging for trinkets in the desert. This was in reference to Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Nazis dug up a trinket that, spoilers, ends up kind of, melting their faces off. That trinket was the Ark of the Covenant. Well played, MCU producers. Add another one to the very small details scoreboard. When he flees from the Hydra Fortress in Captain America, Dr. Arnim Zola stuffs a bunch of papers into his briefcase, one of which is a blueprint for the robotic body that his character inhabits in the comic books. He would never actually make the suit in the MCU, instead inhabiting a bunch of ancient computers, as revealed in Winter Soldier. But hey, at least he thought about it. The Collector, the mysterious alien played by Benicio del Toro in Guardians of the Galaxy, stays true to his name. He collects a lot of things. Included in his collection are a Chitauri soldier from the Avengers, Cosmo the dog, one of the original Guardians from the comics, and Howard the Duck. When Clint Barton, Hawkeye, and Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, journey to find the Soul Stone in Endgame, they come across the Stone's Guardian, who greets Barton as Clint, son of Edith. This is a poignant reference to Barton's origin story in the comics. Barton was very close to his mother, Edith, while despising his father, Harold. Harold's alcoholism eventually led to him killing himself in a car accident, along with Edith. All fans know the mighty Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, which has been described as one of the most formidable weapons known to man or God, but most people don't realize just how powerful it really is. In the comics, the weapon is actually capable of creating force fields so powerful that they can destroy an entire galaxy. And that's not all. Mjolnir is so strong that it can travel through whole planets to return to Thor. Too bad Hela smashed it in Ragnarok. In the comics, Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, had a pet cat named Chewie, except that Chewie ended up not being an actual cat, but a Flerken, an alien creature that disguises itself as a cat but actually has giant tentacles and fangs. The only reason she found out about its true form was that Rocket Raccoon was able to sniff it out. Such an amazing character obviously couldn't be left out of the MCU, and the cat, renamed Goose, in reference to Top Gun, stole audiences' hearts in 2019's Captain Marvel, even playing an important role in getting the Tesseract into S.H.I.E.L.D's hands. Given that Endgame is all about time travel, there is the inevitable scene where several time travel movies get named by the characters. One of these is Back to the Future, but a subtle reference is also given to that movie in another scene. When Thor leaves New Asgard to join the Avengers again, he is wearing the same kind of sunglasses worn by Marty McFly in Back to the Future Part 2. To get into shape for Captain Marvel, Brie Larson trained for 9 months. To be as authentic as possible for when she appears on screen as Danvers, Larson actually visited an Air Force base, met with various pilots, and learned about different fighter jets. She even got the chance to fly in one. There were actually plans to have Captain Marvel appear in 2 separate Marvel properties before her movie was made, a cameo in Age of Ultron and a much bigger role in Jessica Jones. In fact, Captain Marvel was supposed to be Jones's best friend, sidekick, but ended up being replaced by the character Trish Walker, who the writers felt was a better fit for Jones. Nicole Perlman, co-writer of the Captain Marvel movie, mentioned in an interview that they slightly tweaked Danvers' origin story for the movie to avoid any similarities to DC's Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern movie. In the comics, they are both fighter pilots who interact with and gain powers from an alien race. While it's hard to find anyone who would say that the writing in Avengers Endgame was below par, the writers themselves didn't walk away without misgivings about their own talent. Looking back on the film, Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus have expressed their remorse for not giving Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes more scenes together. Given how closely they've been tied together across the Marvel films, we can't blame them for wanting more of Barnes and Rogers' friendship. Captain Marvel has quite a few ties to the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, as one of the co-writers, Nicole Perlman, was a co-writer for the first Guardians movie, and two characters from that movie, Ronan the Accuser and Korat, returned for Captain Marvel. Everyone knows Black Panther has superhuman strength and reflexes, but his brain might actually be his greatest power. He has a PhD in physics from Oxford University and he's considered to be one of the 8 smartest people in the entire Marvel universe. Also, you know, he can punch really, really good. Director Ryan Coogler has said that he feels like the majority of the films in the MCU look and feel the same, which is why he insisted that Marvel Studios allow him to use the same crew he had on his previous projects to make Black Panther feel like more of a Coogler movie than a typical Marvel movie, and according to audiences and critics alike, that was the right call. In Endgame, Clint Barton, Hawkeye, becomes the first person apart from the Pym family and Scott Lang to test out the Pym particles. This is a reference to a storyline in the Marvel Comics where Barton uses said particles to grow in size. He thus abandons his Hawkeye persona and becomes a new hero, Goliath. Maybe this is foreshadowing to a new sequel for Barton? Black Panther is considered Marvel's answer to Batman, and he shares similar abilities, intelligence, bank accounts, and costuming with Bruce Wayne. They both also stick mainly to the shadows, and generally work alone unless needed by their respective groups. Now we just have to wait for an MCU/DCU crossover. Black Panther gets his super strength and heightened senses and abilities from a plant known as the heart-shaped herb, which only grows in Wakanda. However, when Eric Killmonger takes over the mantle of the Black Panther in the 2018 film, he has the sacred grove of the heart-shaped herb burned to the ground, so the future of Black Panthers after T'Challa is, as of yet, unclear. During the scene in Endgame where Ant-Man is repeatedly sent back in time, only to emerge at wildly different ages, multiple actors were brought in to portray these various stages. Actor Lee Moore, aged 93 at the time, briefly portrayed a very old Ant-Man in the scene. It was the last film role in Moore's career, as he died soon after. Released in 2018, Ant-Man and the Wasp is the very first MCU movie to have a female superhero in the title. And it only took them 20 films to do it. Brock Rummelow, the SHIELD/Hydra operative played by Frank Grillo in Winter Soldier, survives the helicarrier crash and is seen being resuscitated at the end of the movie. 2 straps were noticeably crossed across his chest in this scene, which many fans took as a reference to the character's name in the comics, Crossbones. Sure enough, Rummelow reappeared in Civil War, this time in a far more Crossbones-like costume. Because of the complexity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Peyton Reed spent a good part of Ant-Man and the Wasp's pre-production in close contact with the Russo brothers, who were in the middle of shooting both Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame. Reed also had to keep the continuity of Captain America, Civil War, where Scott Lang appeared and sided with Captain America against Tony Stark. Endgame marks the first time that a character who was exclusively from the Marvel television series has appeared in one of the films. That character is from Agent Carter, Howard Stark's butler, Edwin Jarvis, played by James D'Arcy. In Guardians of the Galaxy, Sean Gunn plays Yondu's second-in-command Kraglin. Sean is the brother of director James Gunn. So yay, technically nepotism. But he plays the role well. It was pretty minimal in the first movie, but it was expanded in the sequel and Sean nailed it. Sean Gunn also did all the motion capture for Rocket Raccoon and played Kirk in Gilmore Girls, 2 characters that had varmint-like qualities. That's a cool opportunity for an actor. But also sort of an insult when it's coming from your brother, no? Hey Sean, you know what you would be perfect for? Acting like a raccoon on camera. It's so easy to imagine. For those that sat down and watched Infinity War all the way through, sitting through the credits felt like gazing at infinity itself, as name after name rolled up the screen. In fact, there are over 10,000 names in Infinity War's full credits. That's as if the population of Cedar, Arizona, all got together and made a blockbuster. Tony Stark and his daughter, Morgan, share a line in Endgame which has become hailed as one of the most memorable by the fans. Interestingly, I Love You 3000 wasn't in the original screenplay. Robert Downey Jr. allegedly says that to his own children, and he couldn't resist bringing it into the film. Mark Ruffalo, who plays Bruce Banner, the Hulk, accidentally spoiled the ending of Infinity War while being interviewed with Don Cheadle at Disney D23 Expo. As Ruffalo is slowly pressed by the interviewer to give out more information about the movie, Cheadle gets visibly worried, and Ruffalo asks, "Am I in trouble?" Looking back, it is quite possible that Ruffalo was in a lot of trouble. But hey, when there's 10,000 people on the cast and crew, someone is going to spoil it. Good thing the ending was so shocking that nobody took him seriously. After Doctor Strange peers into over 14,605, to be exact, possible future timelines using the Time Stone, he claims to have seen one timeline that wins over Thanos. The rest of his actions can be seen as setting up this one timeline, including losing the fight to Thanos, giving up the Time Stone, and being erased from existence. Endgame marks the first time that Bruce Banner has completely merged his powers as the Incredible Hulk with his own personality and brain. This references the plot point in Avengers: Infinity War where Hulk refused to be summoned by Banner during the fight. While initial fan speculation was that the Hulk was afraid to fight after losing to Thanos, the truth was that Hulk was sick of being used as a pawn by Banner whenever he needed to beat someone up. This is also a reference to the Professor Hulk identity, which Banner adopts in a comics storyline. In the Infinity Gauntlet, one of the comic books that Infinity War takes inspiration from, Thanos similarly ends many lives using the Infinity Stones and his gauntlet. In this comic, his daughter Nebula eventually acquires the gauntlet and uses it to reverse the deaths of everyone that Thanos kills. It should be noted that Nebula was one of the characters who survived the snap in Infinity War. Infinity War snuck an unprecedented amount of familiar faces onto the screen. Most strangely, Tobias Funk from cult favorite sitcom Arrested Development made the cut. He appeared as a specimen in the collector's collection, but he was played by an unnamed extra. David Cross could not appear due to scheduling conflicts. His cameo was a nod to Joe and Anthony Russo's roots. One of their first big credits was directing episodes of Arrested Development. Endgame marks the first time that the full phrase Avengers Assemble has been said in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. While it was teased at the end of Avengers: Age of Ultron, the full phrase was saved for this movie. In Winter Soldier, Steve Rogers keeps a list of cultural events, items that he needs to brush up on to acquaint himself with the 21st century. For audiences, this list changed depending on the country where the film was shown, so in Mexico, Rogers had written things like Che Guevara and Neri Vela, the first Mexican astronaut, while in England he had the Beatles and the 1966 World Cup final. Despite playing a badass female hero on the screen, Scarlett Johansson has faced sexism during the press work for the MCU. For example, there was controversy surrounding the photoshopping of her figure on one of the posters for Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Even worse than that, she has had to watch her male co-stars get asked serious character questions during interviews while she gets asked about her body. She finally exploded on an interviewer who asked her whether her underwear was hard to wear under her costume. Scarlett replied angrily, "What is going on? What? Since when did people start asking each other about their underwear?" Then she said, "I'll leave it up to your imagination." Okay. It was awkward. Before their work with Marvel, the Russo brothers made their reputation as directors with the hit comedy series Community. The brothers have paid homage to their roots by placing former cast members of that show in MCU cameo appearances. Avengers: Endgame features not one but two such cameos, from Ken Jeong and Yvette Nicole Brown. Additionally, Brie Larson, Captain Marvel, appeared in several episodes of Community as a minor character. While the sequel to Avengers: Infinity War won't be released until May 2019, it was shot immediately after Infinity War. That means the footage for Endgame was filmed years ago, so the continuity between the two films should be incredibly tight. We'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who didn't like the final battle scene in Endgame where all our heroes unite to defeat the armies of Thanos. Naturally, it's very difficult to get a film sequence like that exactly right, and the Russo brothers had to juggle all the footage that they'd filmed for the scene. Originally, several reunion scenes were filmed between certain characters, such as Ant-Man and the Wasp or Groot and Rocket. However, as emotional as those reunions were, the brothers decided that it would drag the battle down. You can decide whether you agree with them or not. While Avengers: Infinity War had a cataclysmic ending, it's far from the end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In addition to Endgame, there are future titles for Ant-Man, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, and Guardians of the Galaxy confirmed, as well as many other projects hinted at in interviews. The amount of films planned is simply staggering. Fans of Endgame will remember the scenes where humanity is grieving the billions wiped out by Thanos' snap at the end of Infinity War. Two of these men happen to be high-profile cameos. One is the film's co-director, Joe Russo, playing the first openly gay character in a Marvel film, while the other is Jim Starlin, the man behind the Marvel character Thanos. The Infinity Stones that power the Infinity Gauntlet can be seen throughout the Marvel films. The Tesseract was the Space Stone, Loki's scepter. Later the gem in Vision's head was the Mind Stone. The ether from Thor, the Dark World was the Reality Stone, and the orb from Guardians of the Galaxy was the Power Stone. When Thor: Ragnarok was first released, fans noted that its lighter tone and humor was very similar to the Guardians of the Galaxy series. As a result, a nickname given to that film by its fans was Asgardians of the Galaxy. At the end of Avengers: Endgame, Thor openly uses that term to describe his team-up with the Guardians of the Galaxy. A furious Ike Perlmutter, Marvel Entertainment's CEO, demanded the writers cut Robert Downey Jr. out of the script for Civil War completely. Why? Robert Downey Jr.'s role was originally smaller, requiring only 3 weeks of work. Downey pushed for a bigger role, which would have resulted in a bigger payday. However, Kevin Feige, Marvel Studios president, pushed for Downey's expanded role, arguing that it could lead to many future storyline possibilities and, as a result, Downey got his payday after all, which includes a hefty back-end participation deal. After this debacle, Feige made sure that the famously stinny Perlmutter had only limited input on future MCU films. Thank goodness. One of the biggest twists in Endgame, spoilers, again, is the decision by Steve Rogers to stay in the past, living the life he always wanted. An elderly Rogers then gives his Captain America shield to his friend Sam Wilson, aka Falcon. Comic book fans will know that there is a precedence for this, as Wilson became Captain America in the 2010 Shadowland series. Of course, those fans will also point out that Bucky Barnes, who witnesses the exchange, could also have been a candidate for the job, since he was also their man behind the shield in the 2007 comic series The Death of Captain America. In Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Nick Fury recounts the tale of his grandfather being an elevator operator. In A Case of Art Imitating Life, Samuel L. Jackson's grandfather actually was an elevator operator. As you can tell by this list, Avengers: Endgame serves as a true finale to many of the film's characters, with callbacks made to nearly all the previous films. One of the most powerful examples of these callbacks refers to the original argument between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers in the first Avengers film. Rogers dismisses Stark as not being the guy to make a self-sacrifice, while Stark declares that everything special about Rogers came out of a bottle. In this film, they both prove the other wrong. Rogers' personal character and morals are such that he can wield Thor's hammer Mjolnir, while Stark makes the ultimate sacrifice to defeat Thanos. According to one of the Russo brothers, Avengers Endgame originally included a scene where Tony Stark gets a vision of his teenage daughter, Morgan. Catherine Langford was cast in the role and the scene was filmed, providing a sort of magical message to Tony that his sacrifice worked and everything would be okay. However, the scene was cut from the final version of the film. Though he played Bruce Banner in The Incredible Hulk, Edward Norton was not cast in The Avengers because the director, Joss Whedon, considered him not creative enough, and lacking the collaborative spirit. I suppose Norton's loss is Mark Ruffalo's gain, although, it's a little difficult to imagine that Edward Norton is lacking creative energy. After all, this is a man who has written scripts himself, and been a part of critically acclaimed pictures like American History X. Which is hardly an unoriginal movie. It seems more likely that the issue had more to do with the second criticism, lack collaborative spirit. After all, Norton has a reputation for tweaking screenplays while a movie is shooting. Sounds like a bit of a control freak. Which can be a little bit difficult to work with. Even though Stan Lee was receiving a nice payout from Marvel through much of the 1990s and 2000s, he owned no equity in Marvel when it was sold to Disney for $4 billion. Lee later said, "One of my lifelong regrets is that I've always been too casual about money. It's been made abundantly clear to me, by friends and others, that I should have realized I was creating a whole caboodle of characters that became valuable franchises, but I was creating them for others." While promoting Avengers: Age of Ultron, Robert Downey Jr. walked out of an interview with a journalist who insisted on dredging up the actor's past. After bringing up Downey's controversial 2008 interview with the New York Times, to which Downey responded with, "Are we promoting a movie?" The reporter then ventured into such topics as Downey's past drug use and his relationship with his father. At this point, Downey had had enough and he walked out of the interview. The journalist in question, Krishnan Guru Murthy, was no stranger to combative interviews. After similarly pushing Quentin Tarantino into topics he didn't want to talk about, a similar scene unfolded, but instead of walking out of the interview, Tarantino berated the reporter for several minutes. Long after the controversial interview, Downey Jr. appeared on The Howard Stern Show and discussed the events, saying, "I'm one of those guys where I'm always kind of assuming the social decorum is in play and that we're promoting a superhero movie. A lot of kids are going to see it. This has nothing to do with your creepy, dark agenda that I'm feeling like all of a sudden ashamed and obligated to accommodate your weirdo-s." Although he was one of the founding members of the Avengers, Hulk actually left the group shortly after their first battle, against Loki, in the comics, because he realized that his teammates were afraid of him. He stayed away for 50 years before finally returning. A mural on the floor containing the orb at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy depicts the 4 cosmic entities of the Marvel Universe: death, eternity, entropy, and infinity. In the center of the mural are the 6 Infinity Stones. That's right, they were teased that long ago, but nobody was paying attention.